They gave me everything. A private jet, armed guards, a name that opened every door in the world. But no one ever asked me if I wanted any of it. And the day I finally said no, 3 people ended up dead. My name is Alexei Volkov, and I was never supposed to exist. Not publicly, not officially, not in any record that the Kremlin wanted the world to see. I was the president's son, but I was also his most carefully hidden secret. Raised in silence, educated in shadows, kept far enough away that the world would never connect my face to his. For 26 years, I played by the rules. Then one night, everything changed. And I realized the rules were never meant to protect me, they were meant to protect him. Let me take you back to the beginning. My mother was a diplomat, brilliant woman, spoke 4 languages, could walk into a room full of powerful men and leave with exactly what she came for, without any of them realizing she had taken it. She and my father met in 1995. A different Russia, a different world. She told me once, just once, that she had loved him before she understood what he was becoming. That by the time she understood, it was too late. Not because she was trapped, but because I had already been born. She raised me in Geneva, quietly, carefully. She never spoke badly about him. She never had to. His absence said everything. He visited 4 times before my 10th birthday. Each visit felt like a state inspection. He would look at me the way a general looks at a map, searching for strategic value. He would ask about my studies, my languages, my physical fitness. He never once asked if I was happy. My mother died when I was 24. Stroke. Sudden. No warning. And at the funeral, standing beside the grave in the grey Geneva rain, my father leaned close and said something I will never forget. He said, "It's time for you to come home, Alexei." I didn't know then what he meant by home. I didn't know then what he meant by come. Moscow hit me like a cold fist. I had been there before, briefly, carefully managed visits that felt more like controlled tours than anything real. But living there was different. The city was beautiful and brutal at the same time. Golden domes against slate skies, luxury cars on ancient cobblestones. Everywhere you looked, power announced itself, in the architecture, in the way people moved, in the way they didn't look at certain buildings when they walked past. I was given an apartment inside the Kremlin complex, a detail of 4 guards, a schedule that left almost no time unaccounted for, and I was given a handler. His name was Dmitry Barskov, mid-50s, silver hair, eyes that never quite matched his smile, the way a lake looks calm on the surface while something large and cold moves beneath it. Barskov told me his job was to prepare me for my future responsibilities. What that meant, I was about to find out. 3 weeks after I arrived, Barskov took me to a meeting. Not a briefing room, not an office, a private dining room, deep inside a building I didn't recognize, with no windows and guards on every door. There were 4 men at the table. I won't use their real names, but I will tell you this. 2 of them were recognized internationally as diplomats, peacemakers, even men whose faces appeared at summits and conferences, shaking hands, signing agreements, smiling for photographs. What they were in that room was something very different. Barskov introduced me simply, the president's son. The men looked at me with an expression I had never seen directed at me before. Not curiosity, not assessment, relief. Like I was the answer to a question they had been asking for a very long time. The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end of it, I understood 3 things. 1. My father was dying. A neurological condition. Perhaps a year of full capacity remaining. 2. The plan these men had been building for years required a transition of power that bypassed every official channel. No elections. No institutions. A private transfer of authority, military, economic, intelligence, to a structure that existed entirely off the books. 3. I was not a guest at this table. I was the plan. I went back to my apartment that night and sat in the dark for a long time. I thought about my mother, about the careful, quiet life she had built for me in Geneva, about what she had sacrificed to keep me away from exactly this. I thought about the 4 men at the table, their relief, the way they looked at me like I was an asset that had finally been delivered. And I thought about my father, the man who had visited 4 times before my 10th birthday, who had stood at my mother's grave and called it coming home. I wanted to be angry at him. The problem was, somewhere under all the granite and the protocol and the machinery of power, I think he genuinely believed he was doing the right thing, that he was building something that needed to be protected, that the world was a brutal place and strength was the only honest response to brutality. He wasn't wrong about the world being brutal, he was just wrong about what strength meant. I made my decision the next morning, but decisions, I was learning, are not the end of anything. They are only the beginning. I went to Barskov. I told him I was out. That I would not be used as a transition mechanism for a power structure built in secret. That whatever my father had planned, I wanted no part of it. Barskov listened. He nodded slowly. Then he said, I understand, Alexei. I'll communicate your position. He smiled that lake surface smile, and I felt something cold move through me. Because men like Barskov don't accept refusals, they file them. 48 hours later, my guard detail changed. New faces, no explanation. 48 hours after that, I tried to contact an old university friend, a journalist based in Berlin, someone I trusted completely. The call wouldn't connect. I tried 3 times. On the 4th attempt, someone answered who was not my friend. They didn't speak, they just breathed. Then they hung up. I realized then what kind of cage I was in. Not the obvious kind. No bars, no locks you could see, the kind that looks exactly like a life. The guards were there to protect me. The apartment was for my comfort, my schedule was for my development, and every single piece of it was a wall. There was one person I hadn't spoken to yet. My father. I requested a meeting. 3 days passed before it was granted. When they finally brought me to him, I barely recognized the man in the chair. He was thinner. The control that had always defined him, that monumental, immovable quality, was still there, but underneath it now I could see the effort it was costing him. Like a building that looks solid but is working very hard to stay standing. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You look like her." I didn't answer. She would be furious with me, he said, almost to himself. She was always furious with me. I'm not here to talk about her, I said. I know, I won't do it, I said. Whatever you've built, whatever these men think I'm going to carry forward, I won't be part of it. He was quiet for a long time. Outside the window, Moscow sat grey and enormous and indifferent. Alexei, he said finally, do you know why I kept you hidden all these years? To protect yourself, I said. Your image, to protect you, he said. And the way he said it, quietly, without performance, without the machinery of power behind it, stopped me cold. The people around me, he continued, are not safe. They have never been safe. If they had known about you, they would have used you against me 20 years ago. He looked at me. I kept you hidden because you were the one thing in my life I refused to let them touch. The silence between us was the loudest thing I had ever heard. He died 6 weeks later, not from the illness, not directly. The official story was cardiac arrest. I know what it was. I know who was in the building that night. And I know that the men at that table had decided that a dying president who was having second thoughts was more dangerous than a dead one. I was in my apartment when they told me. I remember the exact quality of the light, the way the shadows fell across the floor, the sound of the guards' footsteps in the corridor outside. I remember thinking, this is the moment. This is when I either disappear into this machine forever, or I burn it down. I chose fire. I had spent 6 weeks quietly, carefully, making copies, documents, communications, the architecture of everything that had been built in the shadows. I had done it slowly, calmly, the way my mother had taught me to move through dangerous rooms, without urgency, without visible purpose, without letting anyone see where your eyes were really looking. I had contacts, people my mother had trusted, people who existed in the spaces between official structures. It took 11 days. By the end of those 11 days, the documents were in the hands of 4 separate international journalists. Encrypted, verified, backed up in places that no government on earth could reach. And then I walked out. Not dramatically, not through a dramatic confrontation or a chase through Moscow streets. I walked out through the front door, because the men who had built this machine had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that because I was the president's son, I wanted what he wanted. They had never considered the possibility that the most dangerous person in their world was a man with everything to inherit and nothing he wanted to keep. I'm in a different city now. I won't tell you which one. I have a different name, a quieter life, a small apartment with too many books. The world is still dangerous. The men at that table are still powerful. Some of them are still free, but the documents are out there, and every month another piece of what they built comes apart. Slowly, imperfectly, not the clean dramatic collapse of a movie ending, but real, irreversible. My father thought power was a fortress. My mother thought it was a cage. I think they were both right, but here's what neither of them told me. The cage only holds you if you believe you belong inside it. So let me ask you something. If the most powerful people in the world decided, before you were even born, that your life belonged to them, what would you be willing to sacrifice to prove them wrong? And here's the darker question, the one that keeps me awake at 3 in the morning in my quiet apartment in my city I won't name. What if the only way to be truly free is to become the most dangerous person in the room?